This. Let's bring in Rich Rubino. He's an independent political analyst and the author of the Great American Political Trivia Challenge. Great to see you, Rich. Thank you for being here. And it really does seem, to go back to the point at the top here, that former President Trump completely and utterly owns the Republican Party. Now, we have not heard a word of criticism. Is that a fair take?
It is, and it's really interesting because Donald Trump's ideology is different than the Republicans from just the 2008, 2012, 2004 election. The Republican Party used to be a party of free trade, for example, a party that wanted intervention overseas. George W. Bush, in his 2005 inauguration address, talked about ending tyranny in our world. That's all gone. It is now a party of less intervention overseas, a party of less immigration, certainly, and a party of economic nationalism that supports tariffs, that's opposed to free trade. I've never seen, since William Jennings Bryan on the Democratic side in the 1890s, one political figure really change the trajectory and the ideology of one party the way Donald Trump has.
And Rich, the appointment or the choice of Senator J.D. Vance as his running mate, that seems to be in some ways as well an attempt to cement his own legacy, to appoint the torchbearer. Would you agree with that?
I would. There are two things you can do with a running mate. You can either choose somebody from a different wing of the party. For example, in 1976, Jimmy Carter was seen as a moderate Southerner, so he chose a liberal in Minnesota Senator Walter Mondale. Or you can choose somebody that's going to reinforce your message. Bill Clinton chose Al Gore, two moderate Southerners, for example. In Donald Trump's case, he did not choose somebody that's establishment Republican. He chose somebody that prefers Donald Trump's brand of non-interventionism, very much an economic nationalist. When he ran for Senate last time, it was one of his main platforms was being against NAFTA, being against China being allowed into the World Trade Organization, for example. He's really cemented that the Republican Party, this new ideology, that is the ideology and really the only ideology of the party, and anybody else is essentially now called a quote-unquote Republican in name only.
Yeah. So let's look at the Democrats as well, Rich. The glass-half-full Democrats, who had Leslie Marshall on earlier, who is one of those, who says the polls haven't moved that much since President Biden's terrible debate performance. The polls don't appear to be moving that much necessarily in the wake of the sympathy, justified sympathy, obviously, for former President Trump in the wake of the attempted assassination. So she and others in the party are the glass half full. And then there's the glass half empty ones who are saying we've got to replace President Biden's stat. Which glass is, or which view of the glass is the correct one in your view?
Well, first of all, last time around, 94% of Republicans voted for Donald Trump. 94% of Democrats voted for Joe Biden. So we're going to be very bifurcated no matter who the Republican nominee and who the Democratic presidential nominee is. But certainly if you took a secret ballot among congressmen, I think the majority of them would probably want somebody other than Joe Biden. But I will say that no matter who the Democratic nominee is, they're probably going to do about the same. It's really a matter of animating the base. And that's something that Joe Biden has a problem with on his left, because there are some that, for example, have opposed Joe Biden's views on the Gaza war, for example. Thousands of voters in Michigan did not vote for Joe Biden in the primary. That's the problem he has. He also has a problem of Jill Stein and Cornel West, respectively, on his left. But whoever the Democratic is, I think they're probably going to be probably will do about the same. But I think that there's a lot of people in the Democratic high command that would rather somebody like a governor like Roy Cooper or Gretchen Whitmer.
So, but you don't see a jump to Kamala Harris, Vice President Harris, or say Governor Gretchen Whitmer making much of a difference in this, Rich?
No, I think if it's a governor, the one advantage they do have, and I think they're so bifurcated as a country and so many people have already made up their minds. The one thing a governor can do, though, and this is very much for the margins, is they can potentially bring in a swing state. Roy Cooper, governor of North Carolina, one of the most important swing states in the country. Gretchen Whitmer, the governor of Michigan. If they bring it in a home state, they probably bring it in on the margins. And the other thing they can do, if they're the nominee, is they can do what Bill Clinton did in 1992, and they can run against the quote-unquote brain-dead politics of both parties and say, this is what we've achieved. In Governor Cooper's case, he can say, I achieved this. We expanded Medicare. I did it with the Republican legislature. Governor Whitmer can say I did it. I can say that I have some appeal, at least, to rural parts of Michigan, but it's really on the margins, I think.
Great to get your insights. Rich Rubino, thank you so much for being with us this late night. Molly?
Thank you.
Former